Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, host of the Football History Dude podcast, right here on the Sports History Network. Now, before we jump into another sports history adventure, let me tell you about this episode's sponsor. We partnered with Rochester Sports Autographs, the largest JSA authenticated autograph distributor in the United States, where you can get deals on over 30,000 autographed sports collectibles. They even have film, music, and other entertainment autographs on the site, so there's something for everyone. Perhaps you're looking for a gift for Mother's Day, or maybe Father's Day. Heck, who needs a holiday as an excuse to give a piece of sports history to your loved ones? Or how about yourself? Today seems like a great day to add to your sports cave, right? But how is RSA able to offer such great deals on JSA authentication, you ask? Well, they do this by making deals directly with athletes, so there are no extra markups, and they choose to pass these savings on to the customer. All orders from Rochester Sports Autographs are top quality and shipped to your door with top authentication and money-back guarantee. And to make sure RSA knows that the Sports History Network sent you, we created a special link for you. All you have to do is head to shoprsa.com/SHN. Again, that's shoprsa.com/SHN. Head over there to get your piece of sports history today.
It's time for Lombardi Memories. So it takes you back in time, into January or February, to the greatest Monday spectacle in all of sports. This is the podcast that looks back at each and every one of the 50-plus Super Bowls and tells the story of who won and why. For the fan who needs more than just a box score, this podcast goes drive by drive, play by play, through the most dramatic games in history. I'm your host, Tommy A. Phillips, and you can visit my website at tommyaphillips.com, where you can find all of my books. Today we have Super Bowl 50, held on February 7th, 2016, between the second-time NFC champion Carolina Panthers and the 8-time AFC champion Denver Broncos. As always, we have a pop quiz and then homework at the end of the episode. The pop quiz question for today is, how many franchises have had a fumble return for a touchdown in the Super Bowl? So that's franchise, not specific years, just which franchises have had fumble returns for a touchdown, because there is one franchise who has more than one return for a touchdown. But here's a hint. One of them came in this game, and one came in the most recent Super Bowl. You have to figure out the rest for yourself, and the answer will come near the end of the podcast. The Denver Broncos started this 2015 season off 7-0, and it looked like everything was perfect. But quarterback Peyton Manning's skills were declining, and at no time was that more evident in a 29-13 loss to the Kansas City Chiefs, in which Manning's interceptions triggered an exodus of Denver fans and caused head coach Gary Kubiak to replace him with Brock Osweiler. Osweiler went 5-2 the rest of the way, but after being injured in the final game of the regular season, Manning came back to replace Osweiler, and Manning got to play in the playoffs. Broncos then survived two close games in the playoffs, beating Pittsburgh 23-16 and New England 20-18 to advance to their 8th Super Bowl. Manning's stats were horrendous. He threw for just 9 touchdowns while being picked off 17 times. He had managed to break the all-time records for most touchdown passes and most passing yards, but those records have since been surpassed by Drew Brees and eventually Tom Brady. Manning was a liability on this team, a quarterback who had nothing left in the tank. Osweiler had helped save the season, throwing 10 touchdown passes, which was more than what Peyton Manning had, but Osweiler played fewer games. Now, receivers Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders both went over 1,100 yards and scored 6 times. Running backs Ronnie Hillman and C.J. Anderson both ran for over 700 yards. Of course, the strength of this Denver team was their defense, which carried them through the playoffs. Linebacker Von Miller had 11 sacks. Defensive end DeMarcus Ware had 7.5. 3 other players have 5 sacks or more. Shaquille Barrett, a linebacker. Defensive end Derek Wolfe. Defensive tackle Malik Jackson. And it was also very hard to throw against his defense with defensive back Aqib Talib and the no-fly zone. So as for the Carolina Panthers, though their opponents, this was their year. They started the season out 14-0, and quarterback Cam Newton was league MVP. They rolled through the playoffs, went up 31-0 on Seattle, although they only won that game by 7 points. They held on to win. Then they crushed Arizona 49-15 to advance to their second Super Bowl in franchise history. As opposed to his Super Bowl counterpart, Cam Newton had a brilliant year. He threw for over 3,800 yards and 35 touchdowns with just 10 interceptions, while rushing for over 600 yards and 10 more touchdowns. He was a shoo-in for league MVP, with the Panthers finishing 15-1. His top receiver was tight end Greg Olsen, who caught 77 passes for 1,100 yards and 7 touchdowns. Receiver Ted Ginn caught 44 passes for over 700 yards, 10 touchdowns. And then you have their top rusher on their team, Jonathan Stewart, who finished just shy of 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns. Panthers also had a really tough defense as well, with 4 players with at least 5 sacks, including defensive end Coney Ely. The Panthers went into this Super Bowl as 5.5-point favorites. The Panthers won the coin toss, elected to defer, so the Broncos got the ball first. Peyton Manning was the oldest starting quarterback in Super Bowl history at the time. He completed his first pass of the game to tight end Owen Daniels for 18 yards. Then hit Emmanuel Sanders for 6, receiver Andre Caldwell for 22 yards. Anderson broke off runs of 7 and 12, setting up Denver in field goal range. Kicker Brandon McManus made a 34-yard field goal to put Denver out in front 3-0. Both teams went 3 and out after that, and then Carolina took over at its own 14. Cam Newton seemingly had a pass complete to receiver Jericho Cotchery, but he lost control as he hit the ground and was ruled incomplete. So head coach Ron Rivera challenged the play, but the play stood as an incomplete pass. 2 plays later, Von Miller sacked Cam Newton, forced a fumble. Jackson recovered it for a touchdown, and the Broncos went up 10-0. On the next drive, Denver defensive backs Darian Stewart and T.J. Ward combined for a sack of Cam Newton on 3rd down, but the Panthers were given a first down when defensive back Aqib Talib of the Broncos was called for taunting. Ultimately, it didn't matter because Carolina ended up punting anyway. So Carolina forced a Denver punt thanks to a sack by linebacker Luke Kuechly. Newton then got the ball back, threw to receiver Philly Brown for a first down. And now it was the second quarter, and Newton scrambled for a first down to the Denver 48. Panthers got called for a false start, but Newton got 12 yards back on a run. 2 plays later, Newton hit Olsen for 19 yards. Pass to Brown and another flag on Talib got the Panthers a first down at the 1. So from there, Jonathan Stewart leaped over the line, got a touchdown, and Carolina cut their deficit to 10-7. An incompletion by Manning got overturned on review to be a sack, but that challenge cost Rivera the ability to challenge anything else the rest of the game. So the teams traded 3 and outs, but Carolina's next punt went to Broncos returner Jordan Norwood, and he took back the kick 61 yards for the longest return in Super Bowl history at the time, of a punt, that is. It was not a touchdown, as there still has never been a punt return for a touchdown in Super Bowl history, but it set up the Broncos in great field position. Denver had a first down called back on penalty, forcing them into a field goal. McManus made a 33-yard field goal. Broncos went up 13-7. On Carolina's next possession, running back Mike Tolbert fumbled, and linebacker Danny Trevathan recovered for Denver. C.J. Anderson then ripped off a 34-yard run to get it down into Carolina territory, but Denver's drive was stopped when Manning threw an interception to Ely. Teams traded punts after that. The Panthers got one last try for points before the end of the first half. Newton threw to receiver Devin Funchess for 24 yards. Panthers got beyond midfield, but DeMarcus Ware got a sack of Newton, and the clock ran out in the first half with Denver up 6 points. To start out the second half, Newton threw long to Ginn for a 45-yard gain to the Denver 35. He'd later go to Ginn for another 14 yards, but the drive would stall there. Kicker Graham Gano then missed a 44-yard field goal off the right upright that would have cut the lead to 3. Now, Manning took advantage of the good field position after that. He threw to Sanders twice. The first time of those got him to the Carolina 41. Second time got him 22 more yards down to the 17. C.J. Anderson ran it for about 5 more yards to the 12, but then at that point the Broncos ran out of steam. They settled for a 38-yard McManus field goal to increase their lead to 9. So the defenses then took over the game at this point. Newton was intercepted by Ward, and he fumbled it, but Trevathan recovered for Denver. Broncos went 3 and out thanks to a sack by Ely. Then Newton was sacked by Wolf and Miller, force a punt. At the end of the third quarter, Broncos still led it 16-7. Ely sacked Manning once again, and this time he forced a fumble, which he recovered himself. So now Newton threw to Funchess for a first down. Stewart ran for another first down, got to the 22, but the Broncos broke up a third down pass for Ginn, forcing Carolina into a field goal try. Gano made this one from 39 yards out. Panthers cut their deficit to 6 points. The Broncos punted twice after that, but each time Carolina couldn't score to either tie or take the lead. The Denver defense was punishing Newton way too much. Panthers punted once and then had disaster on the second of their possessions whenever Von Miller sacked Newton and forced a fumble, which Ward recovered for Denver. On the play, Newton seemed to back away from diving for the fumble. He got heavily criticized for this, but the fact of the matter is he wouldn't have recovered it anyway. The ball ended up bouncing backward and near the referee. Newton had jumped in. The ball would have bounced in some other crazy direction. He didn't do anything wrong by not diving headfirst in after the ball. It just was a bad bounce, and that's how it went. Denver took over, though, in great field position. It was still a struggle to move the ball, and the Panthers had themselves in third down, but a holding penalty. And that holding penalty gave the Broncos another chance. And then C.J. Anderson ran it in for a touchdown from 2 yards out. Peyton Manning then on his final time he threw the ball in his career, although this didn't count as a pass because it was only on a 2-point conversion, but his final time he threw the ball on a football field, he hit Benny Fowler, a receiver, for a 2-point conversion to make it 24-10. The Broncos were now up 2 scores. That was enough to ice this game. The Broncos' defense nearly ended this game with a safety. Jackson and Ware sacked Newton back at the 5, then they almost sacked him on the next play as well, but he got the ball out for an incomplete pass, and that made it 4th and 24 from the 5-yard line with 2 minutes left, and Ron Rivera opted the punt, essentially waving the white flag. Carolina got the ball back one last time but never came close to scoring. The Broncos have won Super Bowl 50, 24-10. Von Miller was named MVP for his 3 sacks and 2 forced fumbles. Fortunately, this time they didn't give it to the quarterback like they normally do. They just give it to the quarterback because Peyton Manning, he didn't deserve MVP, so it's a good thing he didn't win it here. Now, if I were to give an MVP out to someone on the offense, it would be running back C.J. Anderson, who rushed for 90 yards and a touchdown. But this game was clearly won by the defense, and there's no reason an offensive player should have stolen the MVP away from them. The most valuable player of the losing team, that was easy. That was Coney Ely, who had 3 sacks, an interception, a forced fumble, and a fumble recovery. He would have won Super Bowl MVP for sure had Carolina come back to win. If not for him, Carolina probably gets blown out of this game. What a performance he put up, and he deserves to be remembered for having his biggest game on the biggest stage. Now, the least valuable player of the game, that has to go to Cam Newton, unfortunately. He completed only 18 of his 41 passes and threw an interception while fumbling twice. Now, sure, Denver defense was unbeatable on this day, that's for sure, but Newton was the league MVP, so he needed to put his team on his back. He couldn't do that, and he never made it back to the Super Bowl. Unless somehow he unlikely makes it back to the Super Bowl again, but that seems kind of unlikely at this point. This was his one big shot at the Super Bowl. The biggest play of this game was easy. That was Miller's sack in the 4th quarter when the Panthers were down just 6. Miller forced that fumble, which the Broncos recovered to set up that easy score. Hard to imagine the Panthers driving for a touchdown there, but that sack clinched it for the Broncos. Close second place would be that forced fumble earlier in the game by Miller, which was recovered for a touchdown by Jackson. And that leads us to today's pop quiz answer. The Broncos became one of only 4 franchises to return a fumble for a touchdown in the Super Bowl. So you probably remember the Chiefs doing that in Super Bowl 57. You probably remember Dallas taking back several through the years, as they are the only franchise with more than one fumble recovery return for a touchdown. In fact, they had 2 in Super Bowl 27 and should have had 3, but we all know what happened with Leon Lett. But the one you probably don't remember is Washington. Whenever they got a fumble, Mike Bass returned Garo Yepremian's failed pass for a touchdown in Super Bowl 7. So there's 4 franchises who have returned a fumble for a touchdown in the Super Bowl: Kansas City, Dallas, Washington, and Denver. As for the biggest play you don't remember, how about this one? Newton was intercepted by T.J. Ward, and then he fumbled the interception. But he got lucky because Trevathan was there to recover for Denver. Had the Panthers fallen on that fumble, they would have gotten at least 3 points. But instead, the Broncos got the ball. That game, if that play goes differently, you never know what could have happened in the end. Peyton Manning won his 200th game here in Super Bowl 50, and he went out a winner. He won the Super Bowl in his final career game, and now he was on to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Maybe he wasn't the greatest of all time, but he was certainly far up there. He became the first quarterback to lead two different franchises to Super Bowl victories. We all know who the second one was. Now for this week's homework, I'm going with Peyton Manning, The Last Rodeo by Mark Kisla. It goes through Manning's comeback journey from having neck surgery, being cut by the Colts, to going on to win the Super Bowl with the Broncos. Manning is up there in the top 5 quarterbacks of all time discussion. He went to 4 Super Bowls and won 2 of them. I'd rank him right there with Joe Montana behind Tom Brady. But for now, I'm going to be going on hiatus for a while as I feel Super Bowl 50 is the perfect place to leave off on. In the meantime, you can find all of my books at TommyAPhillips.com. I'm sure you can find something you like, whether it's my NFL books, Nifty 90s, Great 80s, Sweet 70s, or one of my college football books like Penn State Bowl Game or The Orange Bowl. Until next time, this is Tommy A. Phillips signing off. So long.
Hi, this is Joe Ziemba, the host of When Football Was Football, here on the Sports History Network. I'm very pleased to announce that I will be partnering with the Sports History Network to give away 2 copies of my latest book called Bears vs. Cardinals, the NFL's Oldest Rivalry. To enter, just head over to the following link, sportshistorynetwork.com/giveaways. We hope you will enjoy the numerous stories in the book, which is largely based on the newly released Dutch Tournament collection at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Dutch was the co-owner of the early Chicago Bears with George Halas and kept correspondence, financial records, and scouting reports, which now allow us to peek into the management of an NFL club during the first few years of the league's existence. Along the way, we'll meet unusual gridiron characters from years gone by, including a quarterback who could throw the ball farther behind his back than he could throwing it forward, a Bears lineman who was such a good tavern fighter that he decided to enter the boxing universe, and a Cardinals halfback who gave up the NFL rushing title by deciding to not show up for his team's final game of the season. And can we forget the time the Al Capone mob interrupted a Bears-Cardinals game? The new book was fun to research, and I hope you will enter our free contest today. Once the winners are selected, we'll be in touch regarding shipping as well as to inscribe the book personally for you. This might make a perfect gift for Mother's or Father's Day, or simply add it to your own personal collection. Once again, enter by visiting sportshistorynetwork.com/giveaways. Thank you and good luck.